Hello Internet and welcome to this tutorial on trigonometry, more specifically SOHCAHTOA. This is perfect for GCSE maths, however it is quite a complex subject, so if you do need to repeat the video a couple times, please feel free. Let's first take a look at this triangle labelled A, B, C. Now, to use SOHCAHTOA, we first must notice that the triangle is a right-angled triangle, meaning one of the angles is a right angle. We can tell this if one of the angles is labelled with a square or it is labelled 90 degrees. Now, we need to label the sides of our triangle. So let's start with the hypotenuse. This is the side that is opposite the right angle, or the longest length. Now, we can label this HYP for short. The side which is opposite the angle given, or the angle we need to find, can be labelled as OPP, short for opposite. And the side which is neither of these is our adjacent side, which can be labelled as ADJ. Sides and angles can be represented in letter form, which they often will be in the exams. To represent an angle in letter form, you have to simply focus on the letter in the center of this three-letter code. So here we have A, B, C. We're going to be looking at the angle beneath the letter B on our triangle. Now, for a length, we see from one letter to the other. So here we have BC, which is going to be our hypotenuse, as the hypotenuse goes from B to C. And finally, well, let's take a look at theta. Theta is a Greek symbol which is used to represent a missing angle or the angle we are given, a very important term throughout the whole of trigonometry. Now, moving on to SOHCAHTOA itself. You will often get questions like this. Find length BC. Now, you will be given other lengths, and we'll get onto that shortly. But first, let's take a look at our acronym SOHCAHTOA, SOHCAHTOA. We can use three formula triangles to show what this actually represents. And these formula triangles all contain the same letters. You'll notice that the S and the H in SO are on the bottom, while the middle letter is up at the top. This is the same for all three parts. You will need to remember this acronym for your GCSEs. S in SO represents sine, which is shortened to sine, but more importantly it represents sine theta. We'll come on to that a bit later. C represents cosine or cos theta, and T represents tangent or tan theta. O is our opposite, as previously mentioned, A is adjacent, and H is hypotenuse. So make sure you know how to label those sides. Now, first of all, we must see what sides and angles are involved in our question. So here we can see that BA, or our opposite side, is 4 centimeters, and that angle BCA is 45 degrees. Now we need to find length BC, which we can see here is our hypotenuse as it is opposite the right angle. And this allows us to choose which formula triangle we want to use. We know that the opposite and hypotenuse are involved in this, so we must choose the triangle which involves the hypotenuse and opposite. The next step is to cover the value we wish to find. So here I have covered the hypotenuse, as the hypotenuse is x, or BC, which is what we want to find. By covering this, we get an equation which allows us to see that h, or hypotenuse, equals opposite over sine theta. Now, you can see that the opposite in the triangle is now over sine theta. We now need to simply substitute our values to get a nice equation. So we can say our hypotenuse equals 4 over sine 45. You simply want to type this into a calculator to get an answer of 4.66 rounded to 2 decimal places. I will go over where you should type things into a calculator at the end, as there's simply not enough space to do it here. So skip towards the end if you want to know that now. Now, let's take a look at another example, finding length AC. So, first of all, we need to see what sides and what angles are involved in our question. Here we can see that we have 8 centimeters on BC, which we know, given that it is opposite the right angle, is our hypotenuse, and we have angle BCA, which is 50 degrees, and then we have AC, which is what we want to find, and given that the opposite to 50 is BA, we know that the leftover angle must be the adjacent. So this allows us to find the formula triangle we need, as we have the adjacent angle, side and hypotenuse. Now, this means we now must cover what it is we need, which is our adjacent side. Here we can see that C times H is our adjacent, or A equals C times H. Now we just need to substitute in our values, so our adjacent is cos theta times hypotenuse, which means adjacent is cos 50 times 8. Once again, we just type this into a calculator to get an answer of 5.14 to 2 decimal places. Please note that if the question states that you should round to a certain number of decimal places or significant figures, don't just go to 2, go to as many as the question tells you. Otherwise, 2 is probably your best bet. And let's take a look at a different kind of question. Though it looks similar at first, here we are actually being asked to find an angle instead of a side length, which makes things a little bit trickier. So we're going to start off just like we would with the other questions, finding all the sides and angles involved. Here we can see that we have the opposite of 5 centimeters on B to A, and we have the adjacent of 8 centimeters on A to C. However, we have not been given the angle, only which angle we need to find. Once again, we need to use our formula triangle. We see here that we have the opposite and adjacent sides, so we must use the formula triangles that involves opposite and adjacent. Now, once again, we need to cover the value we wish to find, which in this case is tan theta. Now, we now need to write this out as t equals O over A, as in the triangle O is over A, which means tan theta equals opposite over adjacent. We can substitute in our values to some extent, so now we have tan theta equals 5 over 8. However, here is where things start to get a little more complicated, as we don't want tan theta, we want theta on its own. This means we need to use the inverse rule, and this is only for finding an angle, which is tan to the power of minus 1. Once again, towards the end of the video, I will go over where this is in the calculator, and this will definitely not be asked on a non-calculator test. So, we can now rewrite theta as tan to the minus 1 brackets 5 over 8. Remember to include your brackets, otherwise it will not work, it will come up with a math error. Now, typing this into the calculator, we get an answer of 32.01 degrees to 2 decimal places. And let's take a look at another question of similar form. This time you'll notice I've switched the triangle around a little, so you can see if you could notice any differences for where I'm placing the sides. So, once again, we're seeing what sides are involved. However, this time our opposite side is obviously still opposite the angle. It is not going to be BA, it is AC in this case. However, our hypotenuse stays the same, as the hypotenuse is always opposite the right angle. Now, we're going to use SOH for this, as our formula triangle has opposite and hypotenuse, and in this triangle we have the opposite and hypotenuse. Once more, we need to cover the value we wish to find, which in this case is sine theta. Now, we're going to use the inverse rule during this equation, so we can say that sine theta equals opposite over hypotenuse. Pretty simple, as the opposite in the triangle is over the hypotenuse. This means that sine theta equals 6 over 12, as 6 is our opposite and 12 is our hypotenuse. Once again, we use this inverse rule to say that theta equals sine to the power of minus 1, brackets 6 over 12, close those brackets. Remember to close your brackets. Again, we type this into a calculator to get a nice perfect 30. And here is a question for you. If you'd like to pause the video now and try this without any help except for the acronym SOHCAHTOA, then please feel free. Otherwise, stick with me. So, first of all, let's grab our information back, our formula triangles and our meanings for each of those letters. You do need to remember this for your exams. Now, first of all, we need to see what sides and angles are involved. Here you had to work this out for yourself. So we are told that AC is 9 centimeters. So we look at the triangle and we see that the length A to C is clearly 9 centimeters. And obviously we had to find angle BAC, meaning we have to find the angle that is at A, as A is in between B and C in that small algebraic formula. Now, next up, we need to find BC, which is obviously going to be our opposite compared to our angle. We know this is 5 centimeters, as B to C is 5 centimeters, as told to us in the question. This allows us to now pick a formula triangle, which is going to be the TOA triangle, as we are given the opposite and adjacent. Once again, we need to cover the value we wish to find, which is going to be tan theta in this case. This means that T equals O over A, or tan theta equals opposite over adjacent. Substituting in our values, we get tan theta equaling 5 over 9, which means using the inverse rule for finding an angle, theta equals tan to the power of minus 1, brackets 5 over 9, close brackets. Putting this in a calculator, we get theta as 29.05 to 2 decimal places. Now, let me quickly go over some stuff you need for using a calculator. First of all, you need to know where sine, cos, and tan are. These are simply here on the right hand side of your calculator. You just type those in. You don't need to use shift or anything for those values. They will open a bracket once you click them, and then you type your numbers in that bracket, and then you're going to need to close it. If in that bracket you need a fraction, you can use the fraction button, which is at your upper left over here, and once you have done that, you need to close up that bracket. Your close bracket symbol is right here in the middle, and make sure you close your bracket or you will get a math error. Next up, we need to look at your inverse sine, cos, and tan, which is sine to the minus 1, cos to the minus 1, and tan to the minus 1. To do this, you need to first click shift, and then click on either sine, cos, or tan, and whichever you click, it'll be that value to the minus 1. As I say, these values are right here. I know this is a very complicated topic, so feel free to rewatch this video, and otherwise, good luck with your GCSEs, and thanks for watching.